Hello everyone, welcome to this video in which I will answer 5 questions that were asked in various common threads under my videos here on YouTube. And even though I've answered all those questions already directly in the comment section, I think that it would be nice to answer these questions in a video also so I can dive a little bit deeper into the topics. So let's just dive into it. First question was asked by Jack Riley, and most of these questions, by the way, were asked, or all of them, under my most to watch videos, and those are a little bit controversial videos. One is called The Only Skills You Have to Know to Become a Jazz Pro, something like that. And hint, it's not ear training. It's my most watched video, it's linked on this video, and the other one is called Stop Waste Time Studying Modes. So it's both very controversial kind of clickbait titles, but what do you know, those are the most watched videos, and also they have the most comments. So Jack Riley asks me, just curious, if you don't care about the theory behind it, why did you bother to learn the theory? So he's asking me about the fact that I always say, when I show you a nice line or a concept, I say, I don't care about the theory, I just care about the sound. I want to remember the sound so that when I'm improvising, I hear these lines, I hear that concept, and then I can play it. I don't need to know the theory behind it, I just need to know that I like it, that my ear is attracted to it, and I need to know on which chord to use it. But I don't care if it's, belongs to a certain mode or it's a certain kind of enclosure. I really don't care about the names of it. So he asked me, why did you bother to learn the names? Because I do know the names. I always know from which mode something is. And that is because I knew the theory before I could actually play a jazz solo. And that's also how I know that knowing the theory or knowing the names is not necessarily linked to the skill of being able to play it. And of course, the best example of that is all the Sinti gypsy jazz guitar players who don't even know the names of the individual notes, right? If you could say to them F sharp, and then most of them would have no idea what it means. But if you would play a D7 and say play something, they would play an F sharp, but they don't know the names. So they just know what sounds good on which chord. And that is also all I care about. And that is the message I want to convey in the videos. You don't need to study the theory to start playing. It is nice to know the theory, but mostly because then you can talk to other people about it. Or you can teach somebody maybe a high-level concept without an instrument. But as soon as you have instruments, you can just show it and make them listen to it. And the same goes with transcribing from recordings. You can just listen to stuff you like, transcribe it, and don't care too much about the theory. So I didn't bother to learn it. I already knew it before I started really playing. Okay, second question. Second question was asked by Philosophy Lines, and he asks me, can you do a video on how to internalize tunes so you don't forget them? A lot of people would say have ridiculous ears, but you put less emphasis on that, so wondering what you'd say. And Philosophy Lines is right, I put much less emphasis on ear training. In fact, I don't put any emphasis on it. And that doesn't mean that I think that having good ears is bad. I saw that in comment sections. Even Rick Beato asks me in one of my comments, like, probably it's a joke, but do you think that having bad ears is better than having good ears? Of course not. What I'm saying is that you shouldn't spend too much time developing your ears, because I believe that if you spend as much time as you can with your instrument and transcribing, learning from the greats, then you will develop your ear to the level you need to be able to play that stuff. So you will train your ear automatically, even without doing separate ear training. And if there's something you can't hear, but you can still play, then who cares, right? If you cannot tell the difference between diminished and half diminished, but you can play great lines over both those chords, then I don't see why you should feel inhibited in playing over those chords, right? Or why you would think that you're not a true musician or jazz musician. If you can play a great solo, then I don't care about what you can hear or can't hear. So now about how to internalize tunes. So he says that it seems to be impossible to memorize the tunes, or it's very difficult to memorize the tunes. So if you have good ears, you don't have to memorize them. You can just hear it. Well, that might be true if you're a saxophone player or trumpet player or violin player, and you don't play a role in the rhythm section. But if you're in the rhythm section, you got to know those songs before you start playing them, right? The first chorus, you got to play the right chords immediately. You can't wait to see what someone else is doing. So there is unfortunately no trick to memorizing tunes. The way I do it is I memorize a tune and then I play it 50 times, 100 times, 1,000 times until it's part of my system. So for example, I know all the gypsy jazz standards that are played in jam sessions, and then I know a lot more of those tunes, even weird tunes like Diminishing or Spivey. I will never forget those, or Hot Lips. I will never forget those tunes, and the reason is because I've played them so many times in concerts, in jam sessions. I did a whole 2-year tour with the Roseberg Trio where we played Diminishing every night. Right? How am I going to forget that tune? I'm never going to forget it. Now, if I go to a straight ahead session, I still know a lot of those tunes, but much less so. And also, I've forgotten a lot of those tunes. So if you want to play I Hear Rhapsody with me, then the last time I played it was 2 years ago. So you have to refresh my memory. I'll have some questions about the bridge or the last 8 bars, and then I might forget it a week later if I don't play it. If I only play it that one time at the session. So if you want to learn a tune, first memorize it and then play it every jam session, put it on every set list of a gig, and then you will remember those tunes. So no trick, just plain old memorizing and then playing it over and over again. Okay, third question. Asked by Pablo Cardona, and he asks me, Chris, is your playing based entirely on licks? Don't you use scales at all or arpeggios? Just licks over any kind of chord progression? A good question, and I can see why you would think that. And the answer is yes and no. So let me just tell you what the basis is of my playing, because the next question goes into studying licks more, so I will talk about that. But the basis of my playing is what I call my fretboard visualization system, which gives me an overview of the entire neck. So I'm never lost. Doesn't matter which chord it is and where I'm at the neck, I always know what the right notes are. And my visualization system is not based on any of the systems that are already out there or that I know of, because it is based on 7 what I call melodical arpeggio shapes. Those are arpeggios, but they have other notes and they have a certain order, so that if you play that arpeggio, it's already very musical. It's not just a plain arpeggio. And I have 7 of those, and they cover a lot of different ways of approaching the neck. Now, unfortunately, that system is not yet in a video, because for now I'm keeping that system for workshop participants. So if you ever come to one of my workshops, and I have a couple of them in June, Django in June, I'll be in Dallas and Denver after that, I'll be in Ireland, and there will be more. As always, watch the description of my videos, that they will be announced. Then if you go to those workshops, I'll have handouts with the system written down. I'll demonstrate how to use it. So that is the basis, the lowest level of my improvisation abilities is based on that system. And then on top of that, I have my loops system, which is which are long phrases that loop back onto themselves, and all the loops, they kind of interlock. So I can play one loop and then I can go to a different loop. If you want to know more about that, examples, then watch my video, or it's 2 videos called Gypsy Jazz Loops, linked on this video. Go check them out. Then you can see how that works. And then on top of that, so I have my visualization system, I have my loops. On top of that, I have lines that I transcribe from other people. But those lines eventually merge into loops of themselves, or or I combine them with other lines and they become loops. So in the end, everything for me is connected, right? I don't have separate lines like line number 10, 15, and 16, and then I start improvising and I first play 15, and then no, it's all one big thing. So yes and no, right? So let's go to the next question so I can dive a little bit deeper into the topic even. The last question asked by, not the second to last question, asked by Paddy Funk. And he asks me, study great lines. So he says, you say study great lines. In a musical setting, what does the word studying mean? I don't imagine it's like mathematics. So what do musicians mean by the word study? So he asks me basically what I mean when I say study great lines. So this is a kind of a continuation of the previous topic. Because when I transcribe a line, so let's say I transcribe a line that goes like this. 1, 2, so that's a 2-5-1 in C. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I would practice until I can play that comfortably, until I hear it, until I can sing it maybe, so that it is in my ears. Then I would take a song and just play it everywhere. So let's say we take Hans or Rose, right? So it's, so I can play it there. 1, 2, 3, 4. Go to the bridge, so it's 2-5-1 in B flat. So then I have to figure out where to play it. But then I play it. It starts. I know it starts on the 9 of the 2 chord. So the 2 chord in B flat is C minor. So I have to start on D. And then back to the A part. So I would play that. Maybe that's not the best standard to use it on, but I would play it everywhere I can to kind of play that line in different keys and in different places and start to see it on the neck. The next step would be for me to play that line, but then not stop in between, but try to play a solo where I can play towards that line and also away from the line. If you want to know more about that, check out my system called Stardust. That's what I'm talking about. It's linked on this video. And maybe I turn the line into a loop. Then I start altering the line, right? I could maybe, instead of, I could do, just put some little thing before. Or maybe change the rhythm. Or start on the second note. Right? Or start on the third note. So, or change the ending. Right, so there's many things I could do to make the line not a static thing, but to make it my own. Put my own little identity on the line, my own personality. And hopefully this way, by shifting the line, changing it rhythmically, experimenting with the line, it becomes part of me. So that when I have to improvise, this line comes out in any way possible. Because that's the hard part. People always think, oh, that's easy. You just transcribe 10 lines at noon, and then you practice them, and then during the gig, during night, you can play all those lines. That doesn't work like that. It takes a long time before they become part of your system, because the main thing is when you play a solo, you want to tap into a certain kind of flow. You want to play flowing solo. So you cannot stop playing, think about the line you want to play, and then play it. That would sound very choppy. And then you would actually be stringing together like separate lines, like from different places. That would sound awful. You have to tell a story. So in order for the new line to show up in between all the stuff you're comfortable with, that takes a long time. And it might never happen. In fact, I've practiced hundreds of lines and maybe 10% sticks. But that 10%, I can really play and I can really connect them, and it feels like my lines. They are my lines because it's very far away from where I started. So I keep working on new lines, hoping that they will show up. Some will show up, and maybe if line number 50 shows up in some weird way, then line 65 also shows up because it somehow fits together, right? This is not it's not a random process. I mean, the process is very non-random, but the results are not predictable. So that's why I always say care about the work more so than the results. Because if you care about the results, you'll become frustrated because you'll be practicing many lines that actually don't show up in your playing. But when you practice them, you're also working on other things: technique, timing, sound, creativity. So it's all good. So that's what I mean by studying great lines, right? Transcribe them first and then start working with the lines in a creative way. Okay, and that brings us to the last question asked by Asaf Elbaz. And he asks me, thanks for the great video. Also love the sound of the guitar. Do you use flat-wound strings? By which brand? Thanks. Okay, so this is a good opportunity for me to talk a little bit about the equipment. So when I play on an Archtop, I always use this Archtop. It's a Peerless. I'm not sponsored by Peerless, I bought it myself, but I'm just telling you what brand I have. I don't use flat-wound strings because I kind of hate flat-wound strings. I did try it, but for me, it kills the sound of the guitar. It makes it very dull and dead. I know there's some people that get great results, so maybe it has something to do with the fact that I'm a gypsy jazz picker and my technique is more suited to round wound. I don't know, but the moment I put round wounds on it, the guitar came alive. So the brand I use is Thomastik Bebop strings. It's just the first ones I tried. I like them, so I'm not endorsed by them or anything. I'll put a link to those strings under the video to a place where you can check them out, buy them. And I use 12 gauge. So on gypsy jazz guitar, I usually use 11 or 10, usually 11. But on Archtop, for some reason, I tried 11, but it was too thin. 12 feels good to me. So this guitar has a humbucker floating pickup, and I connect that to a small tube amp. And I have really a super small tube amp. It's a Vox MV50, which is not usually used for jazz. I have the clean variant because there's three different variants. And the reason I use this amp, and I have the smallest speaker. I can lift it now because it's all kind of chords. I have the smallest speaker, but you can connect it to a big speaker. But the reason I use it is because if I open the gain on my guitar, I can add some distortion to loud chords. You cannot hear it now because I cannot put it louder because I will overload the microphone. But that little distortion when I play a loud chord is also what Django had on the old recordings, and I love that sound. And you can only get that with a tube amp. So that's how I get my sound. I have round wounds with a floating humbucker pickup to a tube amp, and then of course my technique is all gypsy jazz picking. Which also I think gives a certain kind of sound that you don't get by alternate picking or economy. That's not to say you cannot get a good sound, but I think the gypsy jazz picking makes for a little bit more exciting sound, which also, of course, you might not like, right? But that's the way I get my sound. And okay, I use a Wegenpick also. This is I switch between the Big City Wegen pick and this is the Bluegrass pick. I tend to use Big City on Gypsy Jazz guitar, but for the arch top I've found that this pick works really well. I will put a link to those picks under the video too. Again, I'm not sponsored by any of these brands. And then this cloth, I also get a lot of questions. People ask me if it's to wipe my hand, the sweat from my hand, but no. This cloth is here because some notes produce a very loud harmonic. It's so loud that it's super annoying, and so this cloth kills that harmonic. And it's not a special cloth, it's just the first thing I found and it works. So maybe it kind of looks weird. If you know a better solution that looks better, then tell me. Those were the questions. I hope you got some clarifications on my thoughts, especially on studying lines. And if you have more questions, please ask them, because I plan to make one a month where I choose 5 or more, but probably 5 interesting questions and talk a little bit about those topics. Until the next video, bye!